Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freighter. In my teenage years, the 1970s, I developed an enduring passion for music, especially reggae and dancehall. Back then, I used to venture into some of the toughest ghettos in Kingston to listen to my favorite sound systems, Kingston with Daddy U-Roy and Gemini with the likes of Wilt and Irie. I had just entered Michael Teachers College, now university, and as a 17-year-old and with no parents around to provide day-to-day supervision, I did just about anything I wanted to as an adventurous teenager. It was during that time that I got to know Reggae King Bob Marley. He was close friends with my cousin, Opie Opie Dread Woodfine, and sometimes when Opie was going to make the trot to see Bob, I would trot along. During that time, I got to know many musicians, including one of my old favorites, Jacob Killer Miller. Prior to seeing Bob in Kingston, I would have seen him in Falmouth in and around the 1976 period when I was a student at the William Nib High School. At that time, Anita Bell Navis, who was a big star in Falmouth, having crowned herself Caribbean table tennis champion, was pregnant with Bob's second to last son, Kimani Marley. Sometimes when Bob came to Falmouth, he would stop by the Edison Awakening Youth Center where we played football in the afternoons. He was always eager to join the kick around as he was a pretty decent footballer. As a young goalkeeper at the time, I got a taste of his kicking power as he was able to shoot powerfully on goal with both left and right foot. In terms of concert performances, the first time I saw Bob in action was at the One Love concert at the National Stadium in Kingston. He gave a dazzling performance, and I was 100% sure after seeing him that I was seeing greatness in action. As was customary at that time, during the summer break I would head to Western Jamaica where my then girlfriend resided. I was in the West for Reggae Sunsplash 1979 at Jarrett Park in Montego Bay, and I was lucky to secure some tickets for the night Bob Marley performed. In fact, I was among the first patrons who entered the venue, which was jam-packed with Japanese and North American tourists alongside scores of Jamaicans. At that time, no one could have envisaged that it was going to be Bob Marley's last performance in Jamaica before he died. I wasn't yet a practicing journalist, but at the time I had an inquisitive mind and I used to enjoy paying attention to details. In this edition of Lest You Forget, I will be revisiting that experience at Jarrett Park in 1979 when Bob Marley, who was then one of my favorite performers, took reggae music to another level. When Marley took the stage, there was almost a stampede as patrons began pushing towards the front of the stage to get a better vantage point. Because I was among the first patrons to enter the venue, I had earlier found myself a decent vantage point. Bob was clad in a multicolored vest and one of his trademark tight, dark-colored jeans pants. His head was uncovered and his locks was flowing freely down his back. I remember that the first song he sang was Positive Vibration. Rastaman vibration, yeah, positive. And it was not because of the thunderous applause that he got, but more so because it was one of my favorite songs of all times. I cannot remember the order in which he released the many classics from his catalogue, but I remember that as he danced and pranced and shuffled and skanked around the stage, against the backdrop of the pulsating musical support which he was getting from the Wailers band, I can clearly remember him reeling off songs like Them Belly Full, Crazy Ballad, No Woman No Cry, Get Up Stand Up, and Rastaman Live Up. Being fairly close to the stage, I got to realize that for most of his performance, Bob Marley's eyes were closed. It was as if he was zoned out and in another world. Of course, the large crowd, which had a generous number of persons who were high on both music and ganja, going wilder and wilder with each new song. By the time Bob got to his final song, Exodus, his body was drenched in perspiration as his skin glistened under the spotlights. While he was singing Exodus, Bob was joined on stage by his two young sons, Ziggy and Stephen. And while they did not sing, they generated a fair amount of excitement as they danced around their dad. When Bob left the stage, a substantial portion of the crowd began heading towards the backstage, seemingly to get a better look at him. It was clear that he had made an indelible mark on them, and they wanted that little bit more of him. As was the case when he performed at the 1978 One Love Peace concert in Kingston, I was thoroughly impressed by Bob's performance that night. I am sure the journalists who were covering that night must have struggled to come up with the right adjectives to describe what was indeed an amazing display of high-quality musical delivery and showmanship. Since that night, I regularly reflect on that performance, because within 2 years, Bob Marley was dead, stricken by cancer, which had robbed the world of one of its greatest musical icons of all times. While my memories of Bob Marley performing is limited to those two great performances, that Reggae Sunsplash performance was unforgettable and will remain unforgettable because it was the last time Bob Marley would have performed on home soil in the flesh. During my time as a practicing journalist, I've traveled to a few countries, and everywhere I went, once I said Jamaica, the next word I would hear is Bob Marley. I remember traveling on a train in Chile, and I saw a young white man singing Bob Marley's No Woman No Cry. After he was through singing, I approached him for an interview, only to realize that the man did not speak English. I wrote a story nonetheless based on what I saw, the awesome power of reggae music and the power of the Bob Marley name. Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freitas. Before you go, please remember to subscribe.